Good evening, everyone.
Kabbalah, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Yeah, so next one is Tetvav. It says, Ninitur, Ve'ala Sukra Katuv Bahag Bore Peri Ha'etz. So he's talking here about sugar. So Bahag says sugar is Bore Peri Ha'etz. So it says with Yosef, Chin Katav Rosh. Rosh also says this. Perek Kitzad Merachim. In this perek. Right, so the question is, what kind of sugar is it? Is it the sugar that we use? Because we use cane sugar, so we'll see how that works. Anyway, so then he goes on. והרמב"ם כתב פרק ח' קנים ומתוקים. ואני אומר שאין לזה פרי. Right, so then he brings the Rambam, what he says about this. So he's talking about cane sugar, Rambam. So let's see what he has to say about that. So he says, כתב קנים מתוקים אשר סוחטין אותן ומשלים מהם עד שיקפו וידמו למלח כל הגאונים כתבו שמברך בפרי האדמה. Right, so the Rambam says, the Geonim said about sugar, cane sugar, that's בורא פי אדמה. ויש אומרים בורא פי עץ, some say בורא פי עץ. And then he says, וכן אומרים המוצץ אותו קנים מברך בורא פי אדמה. Also, if a person, right, takes those canes, and sucks it, so that's also going to be בורא פי אדמה. ואני אומר שאין זה נקרא פרי. So he says, right, that that's not called a fruit. So therefore it says the blessing should be shehakol. Okay. So right, Rambam seems to hold that it's shehakol. So first he brings the other opinions, but he himself seems to hold that it's shehakol, right? And that's the minhag today. Custom like that is to do shehakol, right? On cane sugar. So he says, "V'lo yeh devash shel elu kanim." So he says, this the honey of these canes should not be al yedei ha'ur, by way of fire. Midabash tamarim, more than the honey of dates. The lo nishtana al yedei ha'ur didn't change by the way of fire. Barachin alav shakol. We still do shakol. So he says it's possible to answer his claim here. He says, that's the Torah. Okay, so Shenot Domer Ledvash Tamarim, because it doesn't really resemble the honey of the dates. Shatmarim min apri minat elo adata leochlam. So it says because the dates are fruit and they plant them to eat them. Hilkach kishenishtanu nishtanet birkatan. So therefore, when it changes, also the blessing changes. Midi dahava kol haperot shemarachin mashkin leyotzin men shakol. Just like any ripe fruit juice that we make shakol, chutz mi'ayayin ve'ashemen, except the wine and the oil. Right? When he says oil, it means olive oil. But he says these canes, which are not fitting to eat, and the main point there, the main objective was to get the honey out of there. But that is the priyan. So he says that's that is the fruit. Therefore, it's going to be borpiats. Uh-huh. Wow. Okay. What else we got? Pilpel. Okay, that's it. We're done with this tour. So let's go to Bet Yosef. תוספת בית יוסף, נראה שהרמב"ם חולק על מה שאמרו שהמוצץ אותה קנים מברך בורא אדמה, פרי אדמה. It seems like the Rambam, he says, argues with the opinion that says that when you suck those canes, it's בורא פרי אדמה. וכנגד זה כתב, and right, juxtaposed to this, he wrote, she'en ze nikra pri, it's not called fruit, he says, v'achin lahem shakol, therefore it's shakol. So Rambam holds it's shakol. וגם כן חולק על מה שאמרו שעל המים היוצאים נעשו סוכרים מברכים בורא פרי העץ. He also he argues with that which we said, that you can make bori pri etz on this stuff, on this liquid form of the sugar. כנגד זה כתב לא יהיה דבש של אלו קנים שנשתנה על ידי האור גדול מדבש התמרים. And then he says, right, that this honey should not be any greater than the honey of the dates. So in other words, he's trying to tell you, right, just like the dates is shakol, this also should be shakol, because it's not any better than that. Okay, great. Let's move on a little bit. We have more Bet Yosef here. A little bit more. Okay, so then it says, right, we saw in the tour that says the tour that you can, there's what to answer about this Rambam. Divrei ta'am hem. So he says that this is like, he says there, this is logical what he's saying here. Ve'af al pi ken, and nevertheless he says, kivan de pluk tahi levarech shakol adif de'al kulam im amar shakol yatsa. So he says, but nevertheless, right, even though there is definitely possibility here to deflect the Rambam's claim, but he says, nevertheless, since it's a doubt, so we should stick with shakol anyway. Right? That's what we do when there's a doubt. That's it. So he finishes off with that. So let's see Shulchan Aruch. So it says here Shulchan Aruch, Al hasukar mevarech shakol. Right, so sugar is going to be shakol, as we said. Same thing if he's like sucking those canes. Also going to be shakol. So same thing. One is the powder form, right? One is and some kind of other form there, whatever it is. So it's all the same. Okay, great. So I guess we'll move on. Now we're going to pepper and ginger. Okay, so what does he say here? It says the Tur, Pupil retivta bore priaetz vishvishta belo klum. So he says, right, pepper, right, which is moist, it's going to be bore priaetz. So no, we're not talking about, right, the black pepper, that we use, for spice. We're talking about the real peppers, the fruit, right, the fresh one, fresh pepper. So fresh pepper, they're all the same. Green, red pepper, they're all the same. There's also an orange one. And they have that. They have that in Israel. I don't know if they have it here. They have it here too, I guess. So anyway, yeah. Uh, but the Israeli peppers, they're notoriously sweet. I have to tell you, not the same taste that you get over here. They're really good, actually. Anyway, so it says over here, Bori Pi'etz Yevishta, right? So, yeah, as we said, that it's going to be Bori Pi'etz on the fresh peppers because they grow on the tree. No, that's what it is. But but he says the dry one, no blessing on that, right? So you can already guess why that is because probably it's too bitter. Can't really enjoy that, right? At all. The dry pepper. So therefore, you don't bless. Okay, great. We have also some more tour over here. We got to read a little bit more. So let's go. Let's go over there and read. Right. So that's what he says. The tour, right? That the dry one is not edible. It's just too bitter. V'chen zangvila. Now we're going to ginger. Givishta. If it's dry ginger and things like this, right? Kigon girofla. Shen derech lochlan. We don't eat that stuff. Ela alideh tarovet v'zangvila retivta. Right. So in other words, basically, he's telling you, right, that the dry ginger, it's not edible, really. It's too bitter. Again, right? Same thing. But the fresh ginger, that's a different story. There, you can eat it. It's edible. So what's the blessing on that? Borepi hadama, ginger's hadama. Shira because it's edible, as we said, right? Okay. But it says, but since it's not the main fruit, so therefore we don't bless borepi but rather borepi hadama. The Allah goes mushkata borepi ha'etz, right? So then you have a nut which is called mushkata. Muscat, right? Whatever, I don't know, God knows. Whatever it's called. Anyway, so that one is Boripia. It's because I guess it has a decent taste, right? Pretty good taste there. Okay, interesting. So, in general, right, nuts which are edible are going to be Boripia etz, right? They grow on the tree. Very simple. Okay, great. So let's go to Bet Yosef. So it says here, Says Bet Yosef, Ber Kitzan Mivrachin. Where is this? Also on Brachot, Lamed Vav Amud Bet. Pilpele Rav Sheshat Amar Shehakol. And so Rav Sheshat says that pepper is Shehakol. Right? Rabbi Amar Velo Klum. Rabbi says nothing, no blessing on that. Right? Mitive, so they objected. Haya Rabbi Meir Omer, Mimashma Shneimar. Rabbi Meir used to say, right, from the implication of what it says, the Orlatem Orlato, Et Prio, they should have right the Orla of the Pri, of the fruits. Any Yodea She'etz Ma'achalhu. So it says, I wouldn't know that it's a fruit tree, edible, it's an edible fruit. Ela matam domar etz machal. So why does it say right that it's a tree which is edible? Shevi etz shitam etzo piriyal shaveh. It's talking about a tree where the fruit and the wood taste the same, has the same taste. Which one is this? Pilpelin, pepper, right? Oh. So says Gemara, lo kashya, no difficulty. One is talking about moist, right, fresh, and one is talking about dried pepper. And the dried stuff, is just too bitter, right? So we don't bless on it, as we said. Okay, great. So, Kaptav Rashba, it says Rashba. So he says, you see from there, right, from the implication here of this Talmud, that if it's fresh pepper, it's going to be borei pri etz. That's what it says Ravad. Aval Arif, right? But the Rif says, Katab borei pri adama, he says Hadama. So why would it say it's Hadama? Because he considers it like to be inferior somewhat, and not exactly your choice fruits. It says also Rav Hagon says the same thing. So there's a machloket regarding this, whether it's hadama or it's. Anyway, the Rambam Katab. What does the Rambam say? Katab borei pri adama. He says hadama. Oh, be'arosh Katab. What about the Rosh? The lo nehera le divrei Rif. So he says, I don't agree. He doesn't agree with the Rif. With the parich me'orla, because it objects from the orla. Mishane ha b'yivishtav ha b'yivtivilteva. And it answers right that one is talking about dry, one is talking about fresh. Mikal deretiva periha etzu. So you see from there that fresh pepper is considered to be the fruit of the tree. And we bless borei pri etz. Ad kan, it's the end of it. So that's the Rosh. But when it comes to dry, right, everybody agrees. He says we don't bless on that, right? Too bitter. Oh boy. Okay. Great. So then it goes on. Kataba Rashba, says the Rashba, Shalta Pilpil Retivta, right? You asked the tshuva of the Rashba. You asked about fresh pepper. Why do you bless borei pri adama? Because they grow in a tree. Right? In other words, somebody's asking him this question. Rabbi, please tell us, why do we bless hadama on pepper? Since it grows on a tree, right? Should be borei pri etz. So Teshuvah, he answers the Rashba. So he says, so he says the reason is because when they plant those trees, right, those pepper trees, their intention is that they should dry up, and because they want to, have it like that. They want to have it dry. So they want to eat it like, pounded, like a spice, That's what we just said, right? So they're not eaten by itself like that. So only the minority. So therefore, we don't bless borei pri etz on that. As we said, right, it's a sort of like an inferiority here going on. That's why it goes down to Hadama. אלא בורא פרי אדמה וקרוב היה שלא יברכו עליהם אלא שהכל. So he says that so we should bless Hadama, but right he says, you know what? There was also a side here to say that it should be really Shakol. כקורא אלא לפי שאין האכלים מעט מהם בנתיבותן בידעתם. So it says, but rather, so why don't we make Shekol on it? That's what he's trying to say here. Because some of them are eaten fresh. So he says some people planted for that purpose, for fresh. So it's like a middle thing here, middle ground, It doesn't go all the way down to Shekol, which is like a total, right, degradation. And it doesn't go all the way up, as we said. So it goes in the middle and becomes Hadama. That's what he's trying to say. Okay, interesting. So it goes on. So now we're talking about ginger, right? What's going on with that? So it says Bit Yosef regarding that. Sham amru le Rabbanan le maremor. Kas zangvila beyomad kipure patur. And so it says this rabbi, if a person nibbles on ginger on Yom Kippur, so he's patur. In other words, he's not liable for eating on Yom Kippur. So what do you see from there? That he's not liable because it's not really a food. It's just too bitter or whatever. So therefore, he's not liable. But didn't Rava say, right, that this thing that comes from India, some kind of a spice, whatever, herb, it's allowed. We bless on that. Lokashia, so it's not difficult. One is talking about fresh, one is talking about dried. Rashi, humlata litavaru. Anyway, whatever it is, right? Because of some kind of a funky name here, but the point is, right, that so what's the bottom line with ginger? Right? If it's dry, we don't bless, right? Too bitter. So what do we do with that stuff? We use it as a spice, basically. Right? There are some people who put ginger in foods to spice it. And so we don't bless on that, too bitter. But we do bless on the fresh one, right? Because it's edible, and the blessing is Borei Pri Hadama.
What about if, I wouldn't bless on my spices that I'm using to cook with anyway, but like, what about people who eat like pickled ginger? Is that the same thing?
Oh boy. Honestly, I've never seen this food. I don't know. I've never seen that.
It comes with like sushi. It comes on the side of sushi.
Oh, wow. That's something. I've never noticed that really. Um,
Does
but
pickling change the
well, the
blessing?
question is, right? Yeah, that's a good question. Um, if it's pickled, right? I'm assuming, right, that it's edible, so therefore it would probably be the same as the fresh. If it wasn't edible, they wouldn't put it with the sushi.
Yeah, it's edible, and that's the only way I would eat just ginger. I wouldn't take a
Okay, so
big
if
bite
it's
of
edible,
ginger.
then it's going to be the same thing,
Okay.
Just like, cucumbers and pickles, right? Same thing, Blessing is not going to change. Okay, that's good. So anyway, Rashi explains, umlata, right? Litvarov belaz. So right, there's this spice Indian thing, Maybe it's curry. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Could be curry. Anyway, that's a famous Indian spice, right? Everybody uses it. Okay, so whatever. So bottom line is what that okay, regarding the ginger, we got that. What we do with that? Sorry, I lost the space. One second. Hmm. Here we are. Okay, so right. So regarding that spice, that Indian spice, maybe it's curry. It seems like it's also hadama. That's what it says in the Talmud. Okay, great. So that's good to know. And what else we got? By the way, I just wanted to point out, right, that those pickle kinds of things, that come with the sushi, whatever. The truth is, we're not going to bless on that stuff at all, right? Because it's like subordinate to the sushi, right?
Right, but there's some people eat the pickled ginger like I don't know, and they have a tongue.
Itself, yeah, that's something else, right? If you're eating it by itself,
Right.
different story.
I'm just telling you what it is. I know you've seen that.
Sure, sure. Anyway, right, but when you're eating, those kinds of things, as in general, right, we don't bless on them at all. When you're eating it with the food, with the main dish, whatever. Okay, just letting you know. So anyway, what else we got here? There's something else here. We need to see the tour, I think. Right, so it says here, Ravi lachila ben v'chen zang v'la. Okay, we said that. V'chol kretzer v'zeh. Okay, going right. So yeah, so it's just basically a type of ginger, a jirufla. Right, that's a dry stuff, right? Ginger powder. Okay, so yeah, it's very bitter. Ginger powder. There was like twice it happened to me, like I swallowed it a little bit, the ginger powder, and I almost threw up. It was so bitter. My God. Ooh. I spit up my food. You gotta be careful with that stuff. It's very sharp. Okay, so anyway, what else we got? Right, so we got this jarpula, whatever. So let's see what the Bet Yosef says about that type of ginger. Right, that's like dry ginger. So, כן כתבה רבנו יונה, that's what it says רבנו יונה, והראש, and the ראש, right, ואף על פי שבפסקי הראש שבידינו, but he says, even though, right, the rulings of the Rosh, which we have, he says, כתוב שעל הקנילה מברך בורא פרי העץ. So, right. So he says, right, that kanila is bor pri etz. So apparently, right, this is also ginger. I don't know. We'll see. Uh, you read the Taut Sofer, but it seems like there's a mistake over here, A scribe's error. וצריך לגרוס בורא פרי אדמה. It should be בורא פרי אדמה. Okay. וגם המוריכי תסוד. Also, these rabbis כתבו וזה לשונם, right, קלאוו של גרופלי, שאין רגילים לאכול אלא בלטיבה. Oh, belitvaro, right? So he's bringing all kinds of herbs, which people eat them fresh. In we don't bless on that, and with the dry, I'm sorry. So right, so if it's fresh, we're gonna be do adama. But if it's dry, again, there's no blessing, right? Too bitter. אבל של אבל של עץ קינמון שקוראים קנילה, right? So now he's talking about cinnamon, right? What's the story with that? מברכים לה בורא פרי אדמה. So he says the blessing on cinnamon is בורא פרי אדמה. Why is that? מפני שרגילים לאכלו ביבש. Because we eat it dry, it still has a good taste there. וגם הוא גדל על הארץ, and it grows on the ground. In other words, it doesn't grow on the tree. כמו קנים באגוז, just like, right, these reeds, whatever. Cane, right, cane. או מושקדה, whatever, מברכים בורא פרי העץ. So, therefore, and then he goes on to something else. The goes shekorin mushkada. What about this nut, right, which is called mushkada? Uh, hmm. So, right, which could be almonds, whatever. But anyway, I think so. He says that it's borei piaetz. Shigam nohagin lechol oto biovesh. They all eat it dry. Ad kan lishonam. That's what it says there. וזה לשון השיברו ללקט. Right, that's what it says in שיברו ללקט. פלפלים נחים בורא פיעץ. If the pepper is right fresh, it's bori piaitz. Yevashim, if it's dry, and we don't bless on it. The lachashiva ochel, it's not considered to be food. It's a spice, not a food. Not the same thing. Okay, great. So let's move on. So it says, יש להסתפק על הכופר הגירופלין וקינמון שאר מיני בשמים, אם מברכים להם כשהם מבשים. So he says there is sort of a doubt regarding, right, the things like this, like cinnamon and the similar stuff. So what's the doubt? Do we bless on them when they're dry? But it says not really a fruit. Really, he says it's it is the shell of the tree, whatever they call that, right? The bark. I don't know, God knows. That's what it really is. Then we don't bless on that. Ella shakol. We do shakol, he says. So it seems to be a machloket regarding, right, what do you call it, cinnamon, whether it's shakol or adama. Even if it's moist, he says. Okay, interesting. Wow. ברכת הומלתה וברכת ושמים שחוקים מעורבים עם סוכר. So now he brings something else, right? Again, right, I think this is the Indian spice, whatever it is. And also we have here these spices which are pounded and they're mixed with sugar. Besiman Shiachar, it says we're going to talk about this in the next chapter, following chapter. Oh, okay, well, that's good. So, okay, we're done with this chapter, yeah. So, so we have some Shulchan Aruch here, right? From Tet Zayin to Yud Chet. So that's four halachot. Okay, great. So let's see what we got. So it says the Shulchan Aruch, al pilpil bezangbil yeveshim, right? So if you have pepper or ginger, right, which is dry, ve'ala klau shel girufni. Oh, what is that? So the Rama says naglich. Hmm. I don't recognize these names, but let's see what we can figure out. Uh, Chol Yosef is things like this. Shen derech leochlam ela edit tarobet. So we only eat them as a mixture. That's the thing, right? So in other words, we're talking about things which, they're just too bitter. They're too sharp by themselves. So the only way you can eat it as a spice, basically, as a herb, right, with some other food together. So because of that, we don't bless on these things at all. They're just too bitter. Okay, it's understood. Great. That's Tetvav. Okay. Now we'll go to Tet Zayin. So here it talks about this nut, right? Egoz mushkat, right? Or piaetz, right? So we're talking about, I think it's almond, right? So it's bore piaetz, and then we have kanila, right? Kanila, and it says, and Rama says simrind.
Canela is cinnamon.
Okay, great, 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 great.
The nuez moscada is nutmeg, and the green stuff is the wasabi, I think.
So okay, that's nutmeg. Oh, I see. Okay,
Yeah, nutmeg.
all
Yeah.
right, great. So great. So all these things, right? They're going to be bore piadama. Um, so why is that? Because they're not really a fruit. They just like grow on the ground. That's what it's all about. So, but two different things we got here, right? On the nut that you just mentioned, that's boripiaetz, because that grows on the tree, right? But cinnamon, right, does not grow on the tree, so therefore it's hadama. That's what it is. Okay, great. So that's pretty clear. He doesn't differentiate between dry and fresh cinnamon, right? So it seems to be this all the same.
So isn't cinnamon the bark of a tree?
Yes. So you're saying what? Same, right? There is no dry and fresh, right? That's what you're saying?
I mean, well, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is it adama because it's the bark of the tree instead of the fruit of the tree?
Right. That definitely. It's not the tree. Right. It's not the fruit.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So yeah. What kind of tree is that, by the way? The bark of which tree?
It's a cinnamon tree, I think.
It's called a cinnamon tree. Okay. Whatever. Anyway. So yeah. So whatever. It's just not. It's not a tree. It's like a wood. I don't know. Whatever.
It's the bark of the tree. That's the thing. I think
Gotcha.
I'm thinking that if we were to say pariha etz, then we would be saying the fruit of the tree. It's not the fruit.
Definitely not the fruit. Yeah, okay, that sounds right. Okay, sounds good. Okay, great.
I'm guessing because it's close to the ground, the bark of the
Okay, yeah. See, the truth is, it doesn't really need to be close to the ground. You know why? Because we already learned, right, beforehand that anything, which is growing on the tree, right, even on the top, if it's not the fruit, we don't bless peri pipes, if you remember, right? So same thing over here as well. So it doesn't really matter the height, right? Whether it's 3 feet or 6 feet or 8 feet, it's going to be the same thing, right? Doesn't make any difference
Thank you.
because it's not a fruit.
But you did say that nutmeg, because it is the fruit, is high,
Not
right?
yeah, nutmeg is it's right.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the fruit of the tree. Okay, fantastic. So we got a little bit more here. One more for this chapter. So now, right? So now we're continuing with the pepper and ginger. So now he's talking about the fresh ones, right? So there's borei piadama. So why is that? Because they're edible, and so even though the pepper is the fruit of the tree basically, but we already saw in the Rashba, right? He explained why it's hadama because he said when they plant these trees, right? Their main purpose is not for fresh pepper. Their main purpose is for dried pepper. And this is the reason why the blessing is hadama. So it's sort of an inferior kind of status that it has because of that. Right? That's the Rashba. Okay, good. Fantastic. So therefore, we do Bor Piyadama. Not there was an opinion that said it was Bor Piyadz, right? The pepper, but we don't paskin like that apparently. Okay, great. So then, yeah, I think that's what we saw in the tour. The tour said that, but we don't go like the tour. Okay, so anyway, it goes on. Kol ha'perot she'odea behem shehem ikar ha'pri. So now, right, says the Ramah. Anything which is not the main, right, the main fruit of the tree. Right? We just mentioned that a second ago, right? I'm sorry, I didn't say it right. If it's the main fruit, right, then it's borei pi'etz. That's what he's saying. If it is the main fruit. But if it's not, borei pi'adama. So this is the rule, right? So once you know that rule, right, then you have everything figured out pretty much, right? Whatever. Not everything, but it's mostly figured out. Once you know that rule. So that explains the whole thing, the cinnamon and all that stuff. Okay, great. So that's that. And then what else we got? What about if there's a doubt, if that's its main fruit or not? Then we right? As we said, right? When there's a doubt, we always do bari piyadama and not bari piyaitz. Remember we said that yesterday or the day before? All right, so same thing applies over here as well.
Can you repeat that, please? Thank you.
When there's a doubt, if it's bari piyaitz or bari piyadama, so we do hadama. Why? Because for sure it comes from the ground, right? That Right? So either way, right? It comes from the ground. But right, bari piyaitz is only for the the good stuff, right? The main fruit, right? So could be a doubt. You're not really sure if it's a main fruit or not. So when there's a doubt, you bless bari piyadama. To play it, you play it safe that way, because for sure it comes from the ground. Okay, great. So I think we're done with this. Yeah. So we'll see how much time we got. Yeah, we have a little bit more time. We could go to the next chapter. Reish Gimel. Okay, let's see what we got. Reish Gimel. So says the tour here. Al pirot haaretz borei priyadama, right? The fruit of the ground is borei priyadama. So we already spoke about herbs, right? In the chapter before, but now we're talking about fruits of the ground, right? And there's many of those, right? As you know, like watermelon and melon and all that stuff, right? These are all these are fruits from the ground, right? And all that good stuff, right? Pineapple, whatever it is, right? All that good stuff. So it's Borei Pi Adama. Uh, so it says Beit Yosef, right? What's the source for this? Mishnah, it's a Mishnah Perk Kitzad Mivarchin, right? Again, in Brachot. Lamed Hamud Aleph. Okay, so that's that, right? So we'll do Shulchan Aruch. We'll see what we got there. So Shulchan Aruch. Ish Gimel.
So, like mushrooms and truffles, it will be shehakol, correct? Because
Yes. We're gonna get to that stuff. Yes. So what's the reason why it's Shakol? Even though it grows in the ground, right? But it's not. They say the Chazal, in the Talmud, it's not nourished from the ground. So where is it nourished from? It's nourished from the air. That's what it says in the Talmud. This is the reason why we don't bless hadama on mushrooms. Yeah, we're gonna get to that, but that's pretty much the rundown of that. That's the theory behind it, whatever. Okay, so let's go Shulchan Aruch here. So very simple, right? Fruits of the ground is going to be borei pi adama, right? Okay, so that's simple, straightforward. We can do one more, maybe. We got time. Maybe even two. You never know. Okay, so let's see. So it says here the tour in Bet, umash katav besiman leda ezeu peri ha'etz o peri adama. Oh, so now the tour tells you something interesting, right? How can you figure out if something is from the ground, the fruit, or from the tree? What's the sign? So this is what he says, right? The tour. בסימן לדע איזה הוא פרי עץ ופרי אדמה, כל אילן שעושה פירות משנה לשנה. So he says any tree which makes fruit, right, bears fruit from year to year, נקרא פרי עץ. It's called fruit of the tree. It's a yearly thing, right? Every year comes out. אבל כל דבר שאין שורשיו נשארים בארץ, but something where, right, the trunk doesn't remain in the ground, right, the roots, whatever, צריכים לזרעו, so you have to plant it again. השנה נקרא, בכל שנה, every year, נקרא בורא פי אדמה. That's בורא פי אדמה. There you go, right? So that's your sign, right, for now.
I don't have a question. So bananas will be hadama since they have
Yeah,
to
we're
cut.
gonna, we're gonna get to that, but it's a machloket, because some say that it's a tree, some say it's not really a tree because it's very low.
Papayas too, because
So
they don't grow every year, so they have to
so
cut.
therefore, the rule is, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the rule is that we bless hadama on bananas because of the doubt. As we said again, when there's a doubt, we do pray hadama. So papaya, if I remember correctly, it's also pray hadama. If I remember correctly.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's from my memory, because one time we were eating it on Tu B'Shvat, when I was in Israel. So we were asking what the blessing is, and from what I remember, they told us that's hadama. Whatever we found out, whatever it was. Okay, so anyway, right? Yeah. So that's the story there. Let's see Bit Yosef on that. It says Bit Yosef, Perkis of Mivrachin, right? Where is this? And also in Brachot, Mem Amud Bet, Hecha Mivrachinan Borei Pri Ha'etz. When do we bless Borei Pri Ha'etz? Hecha Derki Shaklat Lepere Atia Legavza Vehadar Mapik, right? So that's talking about something where, you take the fruits, right? And then next year, right, it grows again, right, on the same, trunk, right? Same root. That's called, the fruit of the tree. But if you take the fruit, right, and there's nothing left, right, no trunk, no root, and then it comes out, it's so we do Borei Piyadama there, right? Why? Because, it's not really called a tree like that, since the trunk and the root doesn't remain. So it has to be replanted all the time. Okay, great. So what else we got here? כתוב התוספות, זה תוספות, יהיה תותים וכיוצא בהם צריכים לברך עליהם בורא פרי העץ. So he says, right, what about berries, right? So he says it's going to be בורא פרי העץ. שהרי דרך העץ להתקיים הימים רבים. Why? So he says because those trees, they last for a long time. So they regenerate every year, right? וכי שקי לפרי בשנה זו, הדר עטה הפרי באותו העץ עצמו. So he says, what happens is when you take the fruit, it comes back on the same tree again, right? Next year. Miu, so, right, there's different types of berries, right? But definitely, like, there are many things which are like ha'etz, like blueberries, mulberries, right? All kinds of stuff like that. It's ha'etz. So he's talking about stuff like that, right? Where it grows on a tree. Okay, he's not talking about strawberries, perhaps, right? For strawberries, a little bit different. Okay, so because it's like a bush more, Okay, we'll see. Anyway, let's see what we got here. Meanwhile, Rabbeinu Menachem, but it says Rabbeinu Menachem, though, have you read in Yerushalmi? He brings a source of Yerushalmi, the Masechet Kilaim of Kilaim, the Marchin ala mine atad bore pri adama, right? So he says, right, that we bless adama, right? But I think there he's talking about strawberries, because he says atad, right? So atad is like some kind of a bush. Okay. Yeah. So the Rosh katab ze leshano b'gemara. It says the Rosh kamar kol davar she'oseh perot b'shana l'shana. Anything which makes fruits every year, right? Tree. Nikra etz. That's called a tree. Aval davar she'tzarich lezar'o. But something which you have to plant every year. Kol shana nikra peri haaretz. It's called the fruit of the ground. ועוד אומר סימן אחרת בתוספתא, right? It says also in תוספתא, כל המוציא מקרו עשב או מברך עליו בורא פרי אדמה. So it says whatever, it's like you're just pulling out some, grass from the ground, it's going to be פרי אדמה, בורא פרי אדמה. כל המוציא עליו מענפיו אילן הוא. But it says whatever you take off the branches, that's called a tree. Therefore, it's going to be very payats. Right? Mordechai says, כתוב בתשובות הגאונים, right? It says in תשובות הגאונים, כל אילן דיבש בסיטווה וחלו גבזה וטרפיה לגמרי. So he says any tree where in the winter it gets dried out, and it just like, there's nothing left over, right? No trunk left over, right? And the leaves also. Right? בחורף והדר פרא משורשיו מברכים על פירותיו בורא פרי אדמה. So things like that, which doesn't, regrow. It doesn't stay there every year. It has to regrow, right? Replanted. It's going to be bורא פרי אדמה. וכל כיחד דאה שקלה לפרא. So it says, but if you're going to take the fruit, right? But the trunk remains over. And it's going to bear fruit again next year. That's called priayetz, right? That's called the fruit of the tree. Okay, we're almost done, so I guess I'll just read it off, right? Why leave it like, right? Two lines before, doesn't make sense. Okay, so anyway, right? Yeah. It's become Pesach Rabbi Yosef, right? So Rabbi Yosef Paskins from here, Dotam Tutim because of them. So he says those berries, Shesh Levarech Beri Pi Adama, we should bless Hadama on them, right? So I guess he's talking about things like, again, right, strawberries. Ve'avi Rabbi Manoach Rabbi Menuach, right, brings a source, Yerushalmi, the Marachina, Gol Bnei Atad, Borei Pri Adama. Right, he also says, right, things that grow in the bush, we make Hadama, Aval Haram, but the Ram says, Omer Shenahagu, he says people have a custom levarech alem borei piatz, to make poets on these things. Sharet derech ha'anaf litkayim. Why? Because the trunk does remain, the branch. Yamim rabim, right? Many years. B'shana zo, this year be'adar ate pere b'shana acheret. Then brings next fruits again next year. It's so mitkayim, and the trunk remains, right? Mishana l'shana, from year to year. V'chen ha'ak rabbeinu tam. That was a custom of Rabbeinu Tam, B'Shem Aviv, in the right name of his father. Ad kan l'shano. That's the end of the, right? That's the end of it. Okay, great. So let's just Shulchan Aruch, and we'll rest our case over here, right? That's it. We're done. So it says over here, right? Right? So as we said, right, when you have berries that grow, right, on the bush, it's going to be Borei Pri Adama, right? That's our strawberry. זה לא מקרה עץ אלא שמוציא עליו מעצו, אבל מה שמוציא עליו משורשיו לא מקרה עץ. So he says, it says the Ramah, right? He defines it, as we already said, right? That it's only called a tree where, you remove it from the branch, the trunk remains, right? But if you remove it and it's totally gone, nothing is left over. So that's going to be Borei Pri Adama, as we said, right? So this is the general rule for these kinds of things, right? Okay, great. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll stop here. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Laila Tov, Chazak Baruch. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Thank you so much.